So I felt like we've had enough Switch talk, so this week I want to talk about the Vita, and some of the things I wish Sony, and third-party studios, did for the little handheld that could. Now, this isn't a video of what Sony could have done to save the Vita, as I don't really think it could have been saved, just because of what it was promising and how the market shifted. But I do think the damage could have been dramatically lessened. But watch my video on the Vita for that conversation. So the first thing I think Sony could have done was pay studios to remaster some of those great PSP games for the platform. Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker, Final Fantasy Type 0, the GTA Story series, Monster Hunter Portable 3rd, Yakuza, and Valkyria Chronicles 3 all would have been great games for the platform. Some of those games are even Japanese exclusive, so bringing them to the West with DualShock controls and better resolution in 60 frames per second would have been amazing. And I think that they all would have sold decently, especially the ones that weren't brought to the West. I love Peace Walker, but I struggled from time to time because of the lack of a second analog stick on my PSP. I think those sort of quality of life improvements would have made all those games much better. Then there's the lack of classic fighting games. I wish there was a Virtua Fighter 4 or 5, as well as a Tekken Tag, and getting off the subject of classic, I would have killed for Kings of Fighters 13. It would have been even better if they would have brought in the Marvel vs. series, just like the Marvel collection that we got recently. I think all of those would have been sellers to the fighting game community, but most of all, I wish they would have brought in Street Fighter 4. I mean, we did get Street Fighter Cross Tekken, but why not Street Fighter 4? The 3DS got Street Fighter 4, but for whatever weird reason, the Vita didn't, and to this day it still makes no sense to me. Marvel vs. Capcom 3 was a great title for the Vita, but I think Capcom really missed the boat by not launching Street Fighter 4 for the handheld 6 months to a year afterwards. Next thing to address is the lack of first-person shooter games. We literally had the first dual analog handheld. The library contains fewer FPS games than the Nintendo DS. At the very least, we should have gotten the various build engine games, along with its classic first-person shooter library. All those games would have cost next to nothing to port, and the Vita is more than capable of running all of those games. It's been clearly displayed by the homebrew community. It would have been amazing to have 10 classic shooters on the device, and even better if they could have provided multiplayer support for at least some of those games. And then we have first-person shooter games from the PS2 era, the original Killzone, 13, Time Splitters, Urban Chaos, Black, I could go on. It would have been great to see those games on the platform, with just widescreen support. They didn't have to be remasters. I know Vita players would have been happy with just simple ports with trophy support. And while I'm on the topic, other PS2 games would have been great as well. And again, we just need ports, not full-on remasters. That way they could have kept down cost as much as possible. We could have had Shadow of Colossus, God Hand, Resident Evil 4, the Devil May Cry series, the Hitman series, Legacy of Kain, Soul Calibur 3, they all would have been solid releases. And I know the community would have rallied behind it, because how many of us were actually asking for PS2 support? And then we have the various Android games, which Rin has showed us could have ran perfectly fine on the system. How cool would it have been to get Mass Effect and Dead Space ported to the system back in 2012 or 2013? It feels like a really big missed opportunity, as I'm sure many Vita gamers would have flocked to those experiences and would have paid premium dollar to play those games, especially if they would have added some Vita exclusive content. But a big thanks to the homebrew community for bringing those games to life. Then we have the original games. I know we all wanted that BioShock game, but honestly, the more I heard about it, the less I actually wanted it. Instead, I would have loved a Fallout New Vegas demake that play like the original 2 games. A God of War prequel that took place before the PS4 version of God of War, utilizing the same style as the reboot. And I would have killed for a spiritual successor of Loco Roco in Patapon. Or hell, even a sequel to either of those games would have been great. A Twisted Metal game would have been cool, as well as a Souls-like from FromSoft. And for me personally, the Souls-like game wouldn't even have to push the boundaries of the system. I would have gladly been happy with something low poly. John Carmack wanted to do something in the Rage universe, and I personally would have loved to see it. Now here's my weird one. I really wanted some light gun games. House of the Dead, Time Crisis, and even Virtua Cop. The Vita literally can be played with analog sticks, touchscreens, and gyro controls. Yet we got no light gun games, which in my mind is a shame. They could have even added trophies for completing the game using the various control schemes. And then we got no hockey or basketball games. I know neither are as popular as FIFA or the Madden series, but I feel like every console needs at least a basketball and a hockey game. And lastly, this one isn't really a game, but I wish Sony would have worked closely with Unity to make sure their engine worked better on the Vita. At the time of its release, I'm sure Sony didn't think the Vita would become the indie powerhouse that it did. Hindsight is 2020 after all. But I wish Sony would have saw it coming and worked with Unity to squeeze out some extra juice. The performance of Unity Vita games are lackluster to say the least, and even a 10 to 20% improvement in performance could have resulted in some additional games on the platform and better performance from the other games that struggled. Well, that's all from me. What games would you want to have seen on the platform? What games do you hope eventually will see the light of day because of the homebrew community? Drop your opinions down in the comments. Thanks for watching, and thanks for your time.